They gave me a number on my third day in the Toral detention complex. Not a name, a number. 7 digits stamped on a strip of pressed fiber and threaded through my collar like a tag on a crate of grain. I had been Edrin Voss for 41 years. In the camp I was 471-8, and the guards did not look at you long enough to bother with even that. My assignment was the record hall. The irony was not lost on me. I had been a civil archivist on the outside, a keeper of land surveys, census rolls, provincial orders. The sort of work that sounds dry, until someone decides your records are inconvenient, and you are arrested for refusing to alter them. So they put me in a room full of filing shelves and told me to maintain the camp's administrative logs, which was another way of saying, copy down the numbers that replaced names, and do not write anything else. I did what they said. I also did something they did not tell me to do. Every night, in the margin of my own memory, I held the real names. Prisoner 47109 was a school teacher named Halwin Doru from the eastern provinces. 47122 was a water engineer named Seth. I kept them the way you keep a flame cupped between your palms when the wind is bad. Not for any plan, not for any hope of use, just because letting them go felt like a second killing. The vault was 3 levels below the record hall. It had been there before the complex was built. The Toral administration had constructed the detention facility on top of a pre-human excavation site because the land was already cleared and surveyed, and because the site's original builders had not left a door anyone could open. 200 years, contractors had tried. Sonic drills, chemical solvents, long-range scanner arrays. The vault deflected all of it without apparent mechanism. The administration had eventually reclassified it as inert geological formation and stopped filing incident reports. It sat beneath us like a held breath. I found it by accident. One of the low shelving units had developed a floor crack directly beneath it, and a guard told me to go down 3 levels and check whether the foundation seam below the record hall was spreading. He handed me a measuring rod and a lamp and forgot about me by the time I reached the bottom of the stairwell. The sub-basement was cold. The walls were poured concrete except for the far end, where the original excavation had been left open, a raw face of dark stone that the construction crews had built around rather than through. The vault was there. It did not look like a door. It looked like a section of wall that had decided a very long time ago to become something more deliberate. The surface was covered in shallow engravings, not symbols I recognized. Not any script in the administrative records I had spent my life cataloging. They ran in parallel lines across the stone, densely packed, like the columns of a very old ledger. I stood in front of it for a while with my lamp. I do not know why I reached out. I have thought about it since, and I cannot give you a clean reason. There was something in the arrangement of those lines. The precision of the spacing, the way each column maintained its margin, that reminded me of the kind of careful work a person does when they believe the record matters. Even if no one is currently reading it, it was the posture of the thing, patient, maintained. I pressed my palm flat against the surface and began to trace the first column from top to bottom with my fingertips. The way I had traced manuscript damage in my old work, reading by touch what the eye could not catch. The stone was warm. It should not have been 3 levels underground in a cold sub-basement, but it was. And when my fingers reached the midpoint of the column, the engraving beneath them filled with light. It was not a dramatic light. It did not burst or flare. It moved the way ink moves when you press a clean nib against good paper, steadily, deliberately, filling each carved channel with a pale silver luminescence that spread outward from my fingertips in both directions along the column. Then the next column lit. Then the one beside it. I did not step back, I am not sure why. I stood there with my hand flat against the stone and watched the entire face of the vault come alive with light, column by column, the way a ledger fills when a careful hand is working through it. Then the stone moved, not explosively, not with grinding or mechanical protest. It separated along a central seam that had been invisible a moment before, each half drawing back into the wall, with a slowness that felt like a door being opened by someone who did not want to startle the person on the behind its gator chamber. The air that came out was not stale, it was clean, older than clean. The way deep well water tastes different from surface water, carrying some quality of depth that you cannot name but immediately recognize. Inside the chamber, a single pedestal of the same dark stone held a flat object roughly the size and shape of a closed book. Its surface was covered in the same columnar script. As I crossed the threshold, the object's surface brightened. Not the whole face at once, one column at a time, left to right, as though it were being read. I understood then, in the particular way you understand something that you have no framework to explain, that it was reading me. Not my face, not the tag on my collar, something underneath those things. The weight I had been carrying in the unmarked margins of my mind, 41 years of names held against the pressure of a system that wanted them gone, 10 months of 447109 and 447122, and all the others preserved in the only archive that had not been confiscated. The light reached the final column and held. A sound came from the pedestal. Not a human voice works. Not air moved through tissue, but a resonance that the chamber shaped into language the way a canyon shapes an echo. Clean, unhurried, carrying the particular weight of something that has been waiting a long time to say a specific thing. You were never forgotten, Keeper. I stood there in that light and did not speak. There is a kind of recognition that unmakes you and remakes you in the same instant, not painfully, not with any violence, but with the thoroughness of a record corrected. For 10 months I had been 47108. Before that I had been an archivist too careful with the truth. Before that, for my whole life, a man who believed that the record mattered even when no one was watching, and nothing practical would come of keeping it. The vault had not opened for the surveyors with their instruments. It had not opened for the engineers, or the administrators, or the 2 centuries of authority that had pressed against it with every tool they had. It had opened for a man who traced its columns with his fingertips the way he would trace any damaged record, not because he expected anything, but because the work deserved that attention. The object on the pedestal was still lit. I reached out slowly and lifted it. It was lighter than it looked. The moment I held it, another column brightened along its lower edge. New text. I understood, being written as I held it, adding to what was already there. I did not know what it said. I did not need to know yet. I knew what I carried in my own mind. And I understood now that the vault had known it too. And that somewhere in the architecture of this ancient, patient thing, a record had been kept of those who kept records when keeping them cost something. I walked back up the stairs with it held against my chest. The guard at the top of the stairwell looked at me, and then at the object, took one step back without deciding to. He had the expression of a man whose instruments have just returned a reading he cannot explain, cannot dismiss. I said nothing to him. I kept walking. I did not know what would come next. I did not know what the vault wanted from me, what the object in my arms was capable of, or what finding it would cost. I knew only what I had always known, that a record kept faithfully, in the dark against pressure, is not a small thing. That the names I had carried, Halwandoru, Seth, and all the others, had not been a private comfort, they had been a function. A role older than the complex above me, older than the administration that had built it, older, apparently, than any authority on this world had ever been. They had stripped my name and called me a number. Something that had been waiting 200 years, and perhaps far longer than that, had just told me what my name actually was.